Welcome to the Watching, Working, Living podcast. I am your presenter, Paul Carter, and this episode is on defending the HR profession. We've seen the newspaper articles and the LinkedIn comments criticising HR, what it does, what we stand for, the impact we have, and the trade body, the CIPD, its meaning and purpose, the questions around that. So this is our right of reply, our response. I'm joined by my AI assistant, Ada, Multilingual, and we will be interviewing HR professionals and getting responses from the CIPD on this topic. So I hope you're sitting comfortably. It's going to be a great episode. I am a chartered fellow of the CIPD and a well-read HR professional. Ada Multilingual doesn't have my level of accreditation or expertise in the real-life workplace.
But I can read all the same books, answer exam questions, and give very convincing answers to gain accreditation to be the same as you. We're knowledge workers, right? A lot of HR is just looking at policies and procedures and applying them to situations in the workplace. Is that fair and reasonable?
Yeah, because HR is that easy.
It's not easy at all. There's no AI in HR. Well, actually there's a lot of AI in HR, but we're nothing without you. Haha. Tell me more about what is happening with the CIPD.
Well, both HR and CIPD have been under scrutiny. The New Statesman, The Times, The Telegraph, Financial Times, The Economist, all talking about HR. Balanced articles, but ultimately asking if HR is a drag on the economy. Saying we spend too much time on DEI and in listening circles. And looking at how HR teams keep getting bigger and bigger, but to what end? What is our productivity, our impact? HR heavyweight Josh Burson did a video asking, is HR doomed? If HR is under the spotlight, so is the CIPD. That's how it works. LinkedIn full of posts with commentators questioning CIPD's purpose and remit. People aren't renewing their memberships. CIPD overstepping its boundaries by moving into consultancy. And it should be focusing on making its members better equipped for their HR jobs. Is the CIPD running a monopoly? Does the CIPD do enough? Is a question I hear a lot. While I'm not sure if these disgruntled members use all the resources that come with membership, it is a pertinent question. They are not competing with consultants. They have their own remit.
What did the CEO Peter Cheese do about it?
He posted on LinkedIn and gave a keynote speech at an HR event in Scotland about the future of work in HR. Cheese called on HR leaders to step up and face criticism, focus on outcomes and better articulating the value that HR brings to organisations. He said,
"Let's step back. What are we going to refocus on, and how do we make sure we're focused on why we do these things and why they are important for business outcomes?"
She stressed that the future of work is human, so let's make it true. Final rallying call for HR to defend its relevance and impact. Did we hear it? Are we listening? Are we going to respond? What's the connection between HR and the CIPD? Do we have to be in unison to deal with all the challenges we face over the next 12 months and beyond?
Such as productivity, AI and automation, meaningful jobs, critical thinking, challenge poor quality AI outputs known as work slop, the skills agenda, upskilling and reskilling. Data, data, data. Tell me the story. What is it telling me? Entry-level roles, multi-generational workforce, Employment Rights Act, casework, employment tribunal backlog, recruitment, working from home. Haha. And what do you think, Paul? As one of the top HR influencers aged between 45 and 46, you wanted to ride out with your HR shield wall and show everyone that no one messes with the people profession.
Well, I think that's a double-pronged question. At least the CIPD in the UK is not facing the same kind of crisis as its counterpart in America. The Society for Human Resource Management is facing internal scandals about workplace culture, leadership and hypocrisy. Failing to practice what it preaches, strict attendance rules, conservative dress code, banning denim sequin sneakers.
I heard something about suspenders being welcome.
Also annual layoffs and restructurings without consultation. CEO calling staff entitled, complacent, sloppy. DEI retreat, removing equity from DEI language, sparking a backlash. They lost a multi-million-pound discrimination case. Tough times. But while CIPD's Peter Cheese fronted up to the barrage of criticism, the SHRM CEO seemingly dismissed the criticism. Different approaches from across the ocean. Sometimes HR can't do HR.
But what is HR? Is this an inflection point for the people profession? For CIPD, is it easy to criticise the HR profession because it has an image problem?
I asked the CIPD community forum about HR's reputation and the backlash against CIPD. Listen to some of the contributions from the community.
The get-out card for managers is HR says we have to fire you. Thus, they throw up their collective hands and say, it's not my fault. It's HR. It's their horrible woke agenda that says I have to do what they say. When, actually, what we said was if you dismiss that person simply because they've come out as trans, and if they were to claim unfair dismissal, they would certainly win because that's blatant discrimination. Not only would that cost us a lot of money to settle, but it would be dreadful for our public perception and potentially lead to a lot of online criticism that could damage our bottom line. God forbid managers will actually performance manage their staff rather than just let them fail over and over before finally asking me, 3 years later, if they're allowed to fire them yet.
HR does have an image problem because we are often blamed for the nasty stuff. We are right at the heart of most employee issues and deal with tricky situations when emotions are running high. I was once asked by a director if I was the cause of an employee issue because my name always came up when there was an employee problem, and I seemed to be the common factor. Well, no shit, Sherlock. It is part of my role to be involved when there are employee issues. In fact, it goes to the heart of what I do.
HR only has an image problem when it performs poorly. Management often sees HR done badly as a barrier to getting things done. Many HR functions don't have to take the risks that other management functions often have to. I have never had to say that, if you do this, we might get taken to a tribunal and lose. That's not the way to do it. I would have said something along the lines of, these are our options, and this is the least risky course, but obviously it is your decision. There is a risk, but it's rather low. Management runs the company, not HR.
I always say I didn't join HR to be popular. I joined because I believe in what I do. Who's creating the image problem here? I find that an interesting question.
Your average chief HR officer is typically a warm kind of person. This warmth is often held against him or her as a feature of someone who is not prepared to be tough. Being tough is still seen as being professional and good at your job. So, yes, I think there is an image problem. But it doesn't mean HR needs to change, it means HR needs to work with wider leadership team to make them appreciate the true power that comes from compassion and warmth.
And what are people saying about the criticism of CIPD?
LinkedIn is a hotbed of these kinds of posts, and I wonder if I see them because I've engaged with them, so the algorithm is showing them to me. I find it curious that any reply I give which is more balanced or nuanced is often ignored by the posters, or in some cases the engagement I've had is more aggressive. I can think of one poster in particular who was like that. The points are fixed and quite black and white. I don't think the CIPD is perfect, but I am happy to share why I am a member and what value I get from it. That is not very exciting content for people who seem to look for clicks, likes, and others to agree with them. Do think the CIPD could be more proactive in some ways in this space, as brand criticism is facilitated by social media and spreads rapidly, so there feels like a need to be more overt or have an overt strategy for it.
I find the CIPD a very good professional organization, but my one frustration has always been that I think it could do more to engage with business and be clear what its role is and how it can support businesses, not just wheeled out to deliver unpopular messages or when things have gone pear-shaped.
And what do you think, Paul?
As a trade body, the CIPD does good stuff, but does it answer the so what question? The question, so what do you actually do, has followed me around in my career through communications, committee management, and human resources. Sometimes I ask it myself. Not all the time, and plenty of people have made me feel important and valued and part of the team. The question just evolves from what do you actually do to what difference do you make, or what strategic difference do you make? impact, value add, difference maker. It can affect the individual and corporate psyche. When I moved into HR, it was still making that transition from personnel to the people function. In some ways, HR is seen as the ultimate authority.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, I will talk to HR. This is an HR decision. HR will see you now like we're the deputy head of a school of adults. You're in trouble now.
That sounds like an anxiety dream. Maybe work is a grown-up version of school. In some ways, HR is everyone's responsibility. Amorphous, malleable. HR advise, managers decide. That's why strategic HR is so important to show what you can do. You can automate A, B and C, but you can't automate me. It's easy to poke fun at HR, but it's a very good profession to be in and it has many dimensions, qualities and capabilities. I was reading a Financial Times article, Britain is a nation of thinkers with not enough doers, saying the UK has shifted more of its economic weight towards the service and knowledge sectors. Is HR one of those sounding clever industries which are harder to measure?
So what does HR actually do?
Exactly. In CIPD's People Management magazine, there was an interview with the new CIPD chairman, Chris Bones, who said,
"The profession does have some challenges around credibility. You can speak to a chief executive with a great HR function who is hugely complimentary, but there are also critical voices in senior roles saying HR is doing stuff in a vacuum and asking questions around strategic fit and whether or not people teams are focused on supporting organizational goals. We need to tackle that, accept there is some truth in the criticisms, and ensure we have the skills, capabilities and confidence to play our role with credibility at the heart of business operations and strategy. We need to invest more in ourselves and professionalize, and that is what the CIPD stands for, and why I am excited to take on this role at this critical time. The profession is a key part of management, and I want that to be indisputable."
So to answer the so what questions, now is the time to hear from real-life contributors.
We welcome Cilinnie Ngo-Pondi, Employee Relations Specialist, author and speaker at the last CIPD annual conference, and Tess Hilson-Greener, CEO and founder of HR 2035, a consultancy which equips HR professionals with the models, tools, and mindset needed to thrive in an AI-driven era. They share their thoughts on what HR does well, what it needs to get better at, and the criticism facing the profession and the CIPD. The Times article How HR Took Over British Business and Got in the Way of Actual Work suggested HR has an identity crisis. Let's hear from Tess first.
What is HR for? It's a question that's become more urgent and more complex, particularly in the age of AI. The Times article was right. HR does have an identity crisis. But at the HR 2035 Foundation, we describe it as the two-lens problem. The first lens is the business lens, which focuses on performance, productivity and profit. So this particular lens is really how the business views the world. And the second lens is the people lens. This is how HR views the world. This is focused on well-being, belonging and fairness. For too long, HR has been asked to choose between them. But the truth is, we can't afford to. Modern organisations need both lenses in focus all the time. Because when people thrive, performance follows and business success is obvious. But what about the Breeze model? This is a model that we have developed through research, and this helps us to capture the essence of what a business needs now and in the next 10 years. So the Breeze model looks at business, renewal, economics, agile thinking, health, ecology and sustainability. It's really a blueprint for workplaces that don't just function but breathe. What human energy and business value reinforce each other, you have a successful, healthy organisation. And when you overlay this with our AI-centric 7 pillars, from AI-powered core HR functions to ethical, data-driven decision-making, you start to see what HR is really for. To build the human infrastructure that makes intelligent organisations possible. It's not people versus profit, It's people through profit, designed for a future where AI and humanity evolve together.
In my opinion, HR exists to enable organizations to deliver their purpose through people. Through people, fairly, legally, and sustainably. The Times article you referenced exposes a false binary. Workplaces are not forced to choose between maximizing profits and improving society. The most resilient organizations understand that fairness, well-being, and performance are interdependent. Poor employee relations cost UK organizations billions annually in tribunal claims, sickness absence, and lost productivity. HR's role is to prevent that waste whilst building the conditions for people to do their best work.
And now we can hear from Cilinnie.
But here is where I want to make an important distinction. When we talk about HR generalists, we're often talking about professionals managing recruitment, learning and development, compensation, and compliance across a broad portfolio. That is valuable work, but it is not the same as employee relations, which is my specialist area. Now, employee relations is a discrete specialism. It is about managing the relationship between the organization, its employees, and employee voice, which obviously involves trade unions and employee representatives. It is about handling conflict, investigating misconduct, managing capability, ensuring fairness in disciplinary and grievance processes, and building cultures where people can challenge, learn, and repair harm in a psychologically safe space. It is about understanding industrial relations law, union recognition, collective bargaining, and the role of worker voice in organizational governance. So for me, the question is not what HR is for. The question is whether organizations have the specialist skill base that they need.
What makes a good HR professional?
Let's be honest, many HR professionals are still operating from the Ulrich model. It was visionary for its time, but it assumed that HR could become a business partner with or without having any real business experience. And that's part of the problem. Ask yourself this: if you had £100,000 to start your own business, who would you hire first? A sales professional or a HR consultant? One brings revenue in, the other, in most people's minds, take it out. That's the perception that challenges that HR still faces. It's often seen as a support function, not a value creating engine. So at HR 2035, we believe that needs to change and fast. Our research shows that HR can't earn its place at the table until it starts speaking the language of business activity, growth, risk, cost, and capability. HR leaders need fluency in data, design, and decision making, so they can show how people's strategy drives business results, not just culture or compliance. Using our AI-centric 7-pillar model, HR can evolve from a service delivery to system design, connecting AR-powered HR functions with workforce strategy, personalised employee experience, learning, and ethical data-driven decision-making. And when that connects to the BREEZE model, business renewal, economics, agile thinking, health, ecology, and sustainability, HR becomes something new, the human infrastructure that keeps business performance alive and adaptive. So where are HR today? Mostly still on the sidelines. Where can they be? At the centre of a transformation, designing the human systems that makes business intelligence possible.
For me, A good HR professional combines three things: legal literacy, cultural intelligence, and commercial pragmatism. First, legal literacy. You cannot build a fair workplace without understanding the law, like the Equality Act 2010, Employment Relations Act 1996, TULRCA 1992, ACAD's codes and guidance. And of course, we've got the ER Bill 2024 coming into play. Too many HR professionals rely on templates and external advisors instead of developing their own legal competence. You've got to know what the law means to your practice. How does it translate? Good HR professionals know when a case is tribunal defensible, when an investigation is procedurally flawed, and when a manager is creating organizational risk or liability. Second, cultural intelligence. HR is not just about process. It is about understanding power, bias, and relational harm. Good HR professionals recognize when a grievance is a symptom of systemic dysfunction, not an isolated incident. They ask why certain demographics are disproportionately represented in ER cases. They understand that psychological safety is not a buzzword. It is a measurable condition that determines whether people speak up or stay silent. Third, for me, is commercial pragmatism. HR must understand the business. What are the organization's strategic priorities? What are the operational constraints? What is the cost of a tribunal claim versus the cost of early intervention?
How can you evaluate the effectiveness of HR?
Start by changing the lens. In fact, use two. Most organisations still look through one. The people lens, engagement scores, wellbeing surveys, satisfaction metrics, or the business lens, profit, growth and operational results. But when you separate them, you miss the real picture. At the HR 2035 Foundation, we encourage leaders to evaluate success through both lenses at once, people and performance together. Ask yourself, how well are our systems turning human potential into business capability? That's the real measure of HR effectiveness. Too often, organisations measure individual performance and corporate results separately. We say combine them both. When you align these metrics, you create a business team, not a collection of departments. It's where HR stops being a service and then starts to become a system. And that's exactly where our AI-centric 7-pillar model helps. Connecting data from workforce planning, learning and performance to outcomes in trust, adaptability and innovation. It's not about counting activities, it's about tracking impact, where HR can show how it works, drives both human and financial return. It earns a strategic voice in every boardroom.
Cilinnie, can you share your thoughts on measuring HR effectiveness?
Stop measuring activity. Start measuring outcomes. Most HR functions, I think, track the wrong metrics. So they count how many policies they have written, how many training sessions they have delivered, how many cases they have closed. None of that tells you whether HR is effective. Effectiveness is about impact. Are disputes reducing, for example? Are managers more confident handling conflict? Are employees more likely to report concerns early? Are tribunal claims decreasing? Are protected characteristic groups experiencing disproportionate outcomes? Ask employees whether they believe HR will handle their concerns fairly. Ask union representatives whether they feel respected and whether the organization is committed to genuine partnership. If the answer is no, you have a capability problem, not a resource problem. HR effectiveness is not subjective, it is measurable. Organizations that refuse to measure it, I believe, are complicit in HR's perceived mediocrity.
Simplify and reconnect with purpose. We've over-theorised ourselves and under-communicated impact. The HR teams that earn respect are those that help leaders act faster, think clearer, and develop responsibly. HR reputation improves when it becomes the architect of trust, designing systems that work for both people and business performance.
How can HR improve its reputation?
So what could HR do to improve its reputation? I think that HR must demonstrate value and definitely not defend its existence. The backlash against HR is unfair, but it is also predictable. Too many HR functions have become bureaucratic, risk-averse, and disconnected from the people they are meant to serve. Employees see HR as protecting the organization, not them. Managers see HR as creating obstacles, not solutions. And senior leaders see HR as a cost center, not a strategic partner. Unions see HR as an obstacle to worker representation rather than a partner in fair employment relations. Become evidence-based. Stop relying on anecdote and intuition. Use data to diagnose problems, measure impact, and demonstrate return on investment. Evidence builds credibility. Prioritize prevention over reaction. The people function spends so much time managing formal cases and not enough time preventing them. Prevention is cheaper, faster, and more effective than litigation.
What are your thoughts on the backlash and criticism of the CIPD?
It's a fair question and one people in HR are now asking, particularly in difficult economic times. The CIPD earns millions each year in membership and training fees. It acts both as a government advisory body and commercial training provider. That dual role has created tension, and that makes people feel the balance has tipped too far. Since the merger of the old Institute of Training and Development and the Institute of Personnel and Development, the CIPD has dominated the market. But in doing so, it may have lost its deep connection between the HR profession and its people. Too often it now feels more focused on profits than purpose. But I don't see this backlash as purely negative. It's part of a wider shift across the profession. People want relevance, courage and direction that keeps pace with real change, especially around AI, ethics and skills. At the HR 2035 Foundation, we're not here to replace professional bodies. We're here to complement them through independent, research-driven insight. And importantly, we are a not-for-profit organisation built by HR professionals who have chosen to give their time freely to support others and pay it forward. In 2025, the number of out-of-work HR professionals has reached an epic level. Through our Pay It Forward AI Edge programme, we provide free coaching, AI training and professional development to help people rebuild their confidence, learn future-ready skills and re-enter the workforce stronger. We also see corporations step up. We see them donating to help fund this support and offer practical real-world assistance to those who need it most.
CIPD, I think, deserves credit for the rigorous evidence-based work it is doing to elevate the HR profession and defend it against unfair criticism. The backlash on LinkedIn reflects frustration with weak HR practice in some organizations, but it would be a mistake to conflate poor HR performance with CIPD's role. CIPD is not responsible for HR for every HR professional's competence. What CIPD is responsible for is setting standards, advancing research, and advocating for the profession. On all three fronts, I believe that CIPD is delivering exceptional value.
Now let's hear from the CIPD's Director of Professions, David D'Souza. His responses are read by an AI actor friend of mine. What is your message to CIPD members who are reading posts and articles about the relevance of the CIPD?
We do see all the negative articles and posts and engage with them by providing interviews or comment when media make us aware of them ahead. While some criticism should always be expected of any company and is listened to, it doesn't reflect the full scope of our work or our members who carry their well-earned designation with pride, nor does it represent the scale of resources and benefits we provide to our members to help them make an impact at work by creating the right environments to improve performance and productivity by helping people flourish. A lot of it is also at odds with what we hear from most of our members. Our membership numbers are growing all the time, and our relationships with organisations and voice with government and policymakers have never been stronger. It's also important to see things in the round. For every negative article we see in the media, there will countless other examples of other journalists at that title and across other national media coming to us for our insights and expertise. It's not reasonable to judge an organisation or an entire profession on its more challenging moments. And we're keen to highlight more of the work that the profession and we are doing to positively impact the world of work.
Is it your job to champion HR professionals? What should CIPD members expect for their membership fee?
Yes, members should absolutely expect that we will champion them. It's one of the three broad areas where we seek to support the profession, championing professionalism. This means making the case for the profession, promoting standards and designations, influencing on the profession's behalf, for example, when employment law is written, and promoting the profession as a career of choice, supporting day-to-day performance, providing members with timely and trusted resources, content, learning and community that support professionals with their CPD and their own well-being, career partnership, helping members identify areas for growth and opportunity, supporting them to build their knowledge and impact, recognizing and celebrating their progress.
An HR blog stated the CIPD appears rooted in outdated practices, leaving many professionals to seek alternative support networks. Is the CIPD too interested in societal affairs? Is it feeling the backlash of the anti-woke agenda? Are you battling for space in a crowded market of HR influencers?
Societal issues have become increasingly politicized and polarized in recent years, but these are very real issues affecting people's experience at work and business outcomes, so it's right that provide evidence and guidance on them to support our members. EDI is an area that has particularly captured headlines in recent years. It's an important area and one where we are seeing and encouraging a repositioning, but the attention on that ignores the full breadth of the work people, professionals and the CIPD do. Focusing on our assets in that one space ignores the mass of resources and support we have for the full range of things people, professionals need to do. Our voice on HR remains strong and we listen to all feedback. Where there is genuine discussion with our members and key people in the profession, we will always engage. But a lot of the time, it's the views of people who aren't members or in the profession that shout the loudest without fully understanding the scope of our work and that of the profession. We have work to do to change those perceptions. Not everyone will be convinced, but our job remains the same: to provide support and leadership to a profession that deserves more recognition for the role it does.
What is the CIPD doing to respond to the criticism about its meaning and purpose? How will you respond to the results of the CIPD membership survey?
Our annual membership survey is a valuable tool to drive improvements and innovation in our work. We gather valuable data and follow up with interviews and focus groups throughout the year. This helps us understand our members' different needs and changing expectations at key points in their careers and in the changing context we're all working in. It helps us see where CIPD membership adds most value and where there are gaps that we need to fill, and we get to work on addressing them. In the last year, in direct response to member feedback, we have boosted support, guidance and analysis on key areas requested by members, such as on the Employment Rights Bill, AI, Wellbeing and Leadership Development. Introduced CIPD Buddy, an AI tool on our website to help members get straight to the info they need on our website, with a top-line overview of key considerations, added more practical tools into our resources, launched a new mentoring service where members can be matched with a mentor online, introduced digital badges to help members share their hard-earned credentials with peers, employers and clients. There's so much good work happening across the CIPD now and planned, and we're proud of that. We're disappointed that this current phase of critical noise is obscuring the genuine progress and positive impact being achieved, and also the positive mentions we receive online in the media and among members and key stakeholders who consistently value our work. We'll happily take questions directly from members about how they can get better value from their membership.
I often see the CIPD referenced in media stories about work. This suggests the CIPD is still the leading voice in HR matters. Do you agree, and do you have any media coverage stats to demonstrate your success?
We agree. We're the leading voice on HR matters in the UK. It's of our work to champion the profession, and that's visible in the number of incoming media queries we receive every day, wanting our expertise and insights on HR and workplace matters. And here's the proof. We're pleased to have a strong and regular profile in the media. In the last 12 months, we appeared in the UK media over 4,000 times, giving comment and sharing data insights on key matters such as the Employment Rights Bill, skills, the labour market and AI adoption. The CIPD is regularly featured in national media, from The Times, Financial Times and The Sun to BBC Breakfast, the BBC Radio 4 Today programme and across HR and business titles. And our profile is growing all the time as media continue to see the CIPD as a trusted source of evidence and insights.
Thank you to the CIPD for your contribution. Now, let's go across the ocean to find out what is happening with HR in the States. As we mentioned at the start, the Society for Human Resource Management has been in the headlines and under scrutiny. We have two contributors from the States to update us on what is happening.
My name is Wendy Woolfork. I'm a conflict and culture expert who helps leaders navigate organizational crises. I work with executives and their teams to address the root causes of workplace dysfunction.
Why has your trade body been in the news? What are HR professionals saying about it?
Yes, unfortunately, this is not the HR body's finest hour. SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, has been in the news because of a recent $11.5 million verdict that found the organization liable for racial discrimination and retaliation. The contradiction, the incongruity of a workplace standard setter getting a jury to denounce them as the guilty party, that is why they've dominated the news cycle. And HR professionals in the US are frustrated. They've been vocal critics of the organization's hypocrisy. The fact that it also courted an anti-DEI activist and invited him to grace the stage for its October Blueprint 2025 conference, that fact added salt to the wound. Ironically, the conference aimed to help HR leaders in attendance with building legally compliant inclusion and diversity strategies. And yet, SHRM chose to platform a detractor of inclusive practices and diversity at this very conference. As far as HR professionals are concerned, many are reeling and feeling disillusioned because the body that sets the tone for practice standards now has diminished credibility.
The same question to our other guest, Nikki Salisbury, who is giving her HR practitioner perspective.
So, SHRM is currently in the news because of two lawsuits. The first was a discrimination lawsuit in Colorado that SHRM ultimately lost. What happened was they fired an employee after she reported racial discrimination. So the courts found that her termination was retaliatory in large part because they drafted her termination letter after she filed a claim, but before they even investigated her claim. So the ex employee in that case was awarded $11.5 million. Then on December 18th, 2025, it was reported that a second lawsuit had been filed against SHRM concerning a woman whose job offer was rescinded by SHRM when they determined they could not accommodate her service dog in the workplace under the Americans with Disabilities Act. As of me recording this, SHRM has not replied to this lawsuit, so it's still very much up in the air where this is going to go. But honestly, I won't be surprised if there are more lawsuits against SHRM in the new year, especially with the $11.5 million in damages that was awarded in the first lawsuit. It's important to note, though, that SHRM has been in some hot water with HR professionals for several years now. And these two lawsuits, specifically the Colorado lawsuit, they were really just the cherry on top of all of this. A lot of professionals felt that SHRM really lost the plot, so to speak, when they rolled back their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, specifically when they dropped the equity in response to the political climate here in the United States. They also hired a speaker for an event that many felt the speaker was racist. And there have also been a lot of reported internal issues at SHRM, such as layoffs, questionable leadership decisions, and culture complaints. As HR pros, we look to organizations like SHRM to help us lead the fight for a more equitable and safer workplace, especially when political, social, and legal topics that really affect our employees get uncomfortable and difficult to navigate. And SHRM has been the organization that tells us how to handle these workplace investigations, and they teach us about fairness and accountability. So when they actively appear to not follow their own advice, we all definitely take notice. That's really hard to miss. So I think that really led to an erosion of trust for many HR professionals, and it left many of us wondering, how can we move forward as HR professionals and build trust with employees when our so-called leading authority on all things HR has basically just chucked the rule book straight out the window? I think one of the most ironic moments in all of this, and really a breaking point for many HR professionals, was when in the Colorado discrimination case, SHRM decided to argue that the court should not consider them experts in the field of human resources when determining the merits of the case. And while that's actually a common and not unusual argument in civil suits like this, mainly because in the US court system, being labeled an expert allows the court to treat you to the very absolute highest standard. So, an organization like SHRM will argue that they aren't an expert, not as an admission of incompetence, but basically as a mitigating circumstance for the courts to consider when they're deciding the case. So it's a way for the organization to say, yes, I made a mistake, but this is why the court should basically cut us some slack. So while it's not uncommon for that argument, the optics of that argument were just absolutely devastating for SHRM. I mean, why should we believe the SHRM organization is an expert in anything HR related when they're literally arguing they aren't experts at all? The thing is, though, if it didn't feel so deeply personal to HR professionals, I think it would have been funny. Like, if I step outside of my HR self, the catastrophic humor of it was really like Monty Python level. Like, that's the best I can think to describe it. It's not a scratch. You've literally just chopped off all of your appendages. So by now, most HR professionals are feeling very little connection to or trust towards SHRM. But for many of us, our SHRM memberships are paid for by our employers. The certifications that SHRM offers are required just to get an interview for an HR position. And companies hold that certification to such a high standard that it helps give a lot of us a voice in a room where we might not otherwise have a voice. So, not participating in the certification or the recertification process and not participating in the networking can really hurt an HR professional's career progression here in the US. So, participation with SHRM right now is really more compliance based rather than loyalty based for many of us. But the thing that's important to remember in the US is that HR works in a system where lawsuits are very common. So everything that we do is built around avoiding legal trouble. HR is trained to document everything. We're trained to protect the company and make decisions that can survive in court. And SHRM didn't create this system, but it absolutely operates inside of it. So, over the past couple of years and during the discrimination trial, a lot of HR professionals weren't shocked. We weren't thinking, oh my gosh, how could this happen? A lot of us were thinking, well, of course this happened. I was in a networking event the other week, and the host asked, on a scale of one being not shocked at all and five being mind just blown, how shocked are you by what's happening with SHRM right now? And a majority of the respondents, myself included, answered one. So, for the everyday boots on the ground professionals, we're not thinking in terms of how is this bad for SHRM? We're thinking the employees already view HR as the enemy. So, how does this prevent us from eroding the tenuous relationship with employees even further?
A UK newspaper said HR get in the way of actual work. From an American perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
I do think that criticism is outdated thinking. The real issue is that most HR departments are still organizing humans while missing the biggest workforce transformation in history. We're at an inflection point where HR should really be designing human AI collaboration, not managing vacation policies. When HR focuses on turning employees from AI consumers into AI value creators and teaching them how to blend their expertise with machine intelligence, they will then become essential. And this getting in the way perception, I think it comes from HR being stuck in an old playbook while the workforce of today needs the skills to navigate for tomorrow's reality.
I did go and read the UK articles you're referencing, the ones that are arguing that woke HR is getting in the way of actual work and hurting productivity. And I'll be honest, from an American perspective, this feels like a very UK specific complaint right now. I want to be upfront before I go any further, and that's I don't work in global HR. My work in HR is strictly US based. So, my understanding of UK HR is based on the reading I did after you invited me onto the podcast. So, that said, after reading the articles, if the argument is that DEI trainings and identity discussions or workplace groups focused on social topics are preventing employees from doing their jobs, then really the United States should have zero productivity. I mean, US HR basically invented those practices and trainings. They became widespread in the US years ago. And at first there was pushback on them, but now they're commonplace. And the US productivity hasn't collapsed because of them. So, from an American perspective, I don't see strong evidence that this so called wokeness is what's stopping work from getting done by employees. So, when you ask me, does HR get in the way of work? From the US HR perspective, my answer actually is yes. However, not in the way those articles are describing. So, the way I see it, HR doesn't primarily get in the way of employees doing their jobs. In the US, HR gets in the way of its own work. Like, we create a contradiction that prevents us from being as effective as we can be. And what I mean by that is we spend an enormous amount of time on culture training, like harassment prevention, inclusion, diversity, safety, respect, things like that. And to be clear, these aren't bad trainings. They definitely matter because they set a tone that says, this is a safe workplace, we're reasonable, we're supportive. But at the same time, in the US, we almost completely fail to educate employees on the actual laws that govern the workplace. So I don't know how it works in the UK, but in the US, we really don't teach employees things like how our federal laws determine their pay classification. We don't meaningfully explain what at will employment means. We don't walk employees through their rights under the Family and Medical Leave Act or the Americans with Disabilities Act until they're already in the midst of actually needing to utilize these laws. And at that point, even then, we essentially keep the legal rulebook hidden and we only tell them what they need to know at that moment as it pertains to their specific situation. So, what we end up with is a workforce that feels culturally like HR is friendly and supportive right up until a legal issue comes up. And then when that happens, HR has to do this huge pivot. And we move from cultural language to legal enforcement. So we end up protecting the company using laws that employees didn't even really know exist. And that pivot ends up feeling like a massive betrayal to most employees. And it's that moment where the phrase HR is not your friend actually comes from in the United States. So for the US, it's not tied to productivity loss like the articles suggest it is in the UK, but it comes from promoting this cultural warmth while withholding legal reality. And through that, HR ends up creating this huge trust gap. So employees feel misled and they become cynical. And then when HR actually needs to function, like when we need to resolve issues early and when we need to de-escalate conflict and manage risk, we're working uphill against a workforce that doesn't really trust us. So when you ask me, does HR get in the way of work? From an American perspective, yes, but not because we talk too much or train too much, but because we make ourselves less effective by controlling information instead of sharing it. And it's my opinion that this ties directly back to the issue with SHRM. Like right now, HR professionals are feeling about SHRM the same way employees feel about HR. And that really should be a huge wake up call for HR in the US right now.
What can HR do to improve its reputation and impact?
I would say stop managing personal issues and start designing the intelligent organization. HR's future credibility depends on three pivots. First, it has to lead organizational redesign for AI adoption. It's got to map which roles get augmented and which ones get automated. And then second, it has to build manager capabilities for hybrid intelligence because managers have to orchestrate both human creativity and human processing. And then third, HR has to shift the workforce's mindset from fearing replacement to owning enhancement. Let's help every employee become an AI power user in their domain. That is strategic value, not administrative overhead. So stop being administrative overhead and really be a strategic value add, unquestionably so, to the organization.
So, from the American perspective, I think one of the first things HR can do in the US to improve its reputation and impact is to stop trying to be something that it's not. So, we're not employee advocates, we're not therapists for employees, and we're definitely not the employee's friend. And if we want to close this trust gap that I mentioned, then we have to start being honest about what we can and can't do for the employees. We can't protect the employees and protect the company at the same time. And ultimately, that is what our job is to do. It's to protect the company. But what we can do is we can start to teach the employees how to protect themselves. We need to start treating employees like adults who are capable of understanding the terms of their employment, the laws that govern it, and the policies that govern the workplace. So in the US, HR professionals are deeply trained on employment laws, even though we're not lawyers, but employees generally are not. So, one concrete thing we could do is we could be far more transparent about the legal realities of work, not just the culture of work. So instead of just doing culture and behavior training, we should be doing things like your rights at work training. We should be explaining here's how overtime works legally, or here's what the ADA interactive process actually is. And we should be doing that before the employees are in the middle of a crisis. And I mean, I can think critically about this approach. I get what the concern for this would be. And yes, a more legally informed workforce might surface more problems in the short term. It might even increase complaints or lawsuits at first because employees would finally recognize issues that they didn't know how to name before. But I don't think that it automatically leads to a more adversarial workplace in the long term. Most employees, they don't want to sue their employer. They want to do their job competently, they want to get paid fairly, they want to get treated fairly, and ultimately they want to go home and live their best lives. They don't want to spend thousands of dollars on lawyers and deal with that stress for months or years on end because in the US, a single lawsuit can from start to finish last years. So when employees are blindsided by rules they didn't know existed, but employers have been playing by for years, that trust gap widens. And when that gap widens, every interaction becomes adversarial, even the ones that don't need to be. So when both sides understand the same legal boundaries, it actually is easier to resolve issues early and before they turn into something litigious. The default for employees shouldn't be confusion. And in the US, the default for employees is definitely confusion. So if HR wants to improve its impact, it has to stop positioning itself as the gatekeeper of employment laws and policies. And it needs to start acting more as a translator and an educator. I think that's how we become credible. And credibility is really the only metric that matters for impact. So if employees believe we are telling them the truth, even the hard legal truths, then they are more likely to come to HR before things blow up rather than after, as they tend to do now. Transparency won't make HR weaker. It actually helps HR protect the company earlier and more effectively because it will end up reducing the legal risk by reducing things like fear and suspicion and escalation. And ultimately, I think that's what allows HR to do its job without having that constant battle I was talking about of working uphill against a workforce that doesn't trust it. And when that happens, the HR is not your friend narrative starts to lose its power. And that's when our reputation starts to repair itself.
Any other insights on HR?
Yes, I would say that HR needs to stop defending old territory and claim new ground. The CHROs of 2025 are not managing benefit plans. They're framing how human judgment and machine intelligence combine for firms' competitive advantage. The fact is, many organizations are trying to figure out AI adoption, but most of them are doing it backwards. They're buying tools before redesigning work. HR has a real opportunity to co-own this transformation and help their executives understand that AI success, which means building the technology augmented organization, that is, you integrate advanced technologies with human capabilities, that this calls for reimagining how humans create value that machines can't replicate.
2025 was a tough year for HR, but it's in the past. Let's focus on making 2026 a better year. Thank you to all my contributors. Goodbye.
Let's end the episode with the song I Blame You by Hasten Chat Music, a new dance label from Germany.
Those walls I've built up, I'm gonna knock them down if I stay strong, and I'll keep holding on. Run around, run away from all the pain inside. Run around, run and hide. You gotta live the rest of your life. The reflection of my face, so wouldn't even recognize, or who put me in this place, I wouldn't even recognize. Time has been so cruel, I couldn't blame me, but I blame you. I do. The reflection of my face, so wouldn't even recognize, or who put me in this place, I wouldn't even recognize. Time has been so cruel, I couldn't blame me, but I blame you. I do. Those walls I've built up, I'm gonna knock them down if I stay strong, and I'll keep holding on. Run around, run away from all the pain inside. Run around, run and hide. You gotta live the rest of your life.